So now we've updated the CSS. That's great, but that's not enough, is it? I mean, the model probably needs to know that it has a CSS attribute or that it has this new priority attribute. Otherwise, it's not going to remember this for us. So we probably need to make some modifications there. Where do I go to modify a model? Is it in the view? No, it's in something called model. Shocking. So we come in here and look what I did. I added a new attribute. My God, so complicated. Priority, I'm going to default it to low. You may provide a different default depending on the kind of to-do system you're creating. All right, so there we go. We've come in. We've now added that as an attribute to the model. That's good. But we're not actually updating the model, are we? All we're doing is changing the view. But the model doesn't know that we made a change. So there's another step in here, isn't there? We got to change that model's attribute. We need to also persist the fact that that model has changed so that we can send it up to the server or update whatever's in local storage, et cetera, et cetera. All right? So there are some methods that allow us to do that. You guys remember what they're called? There's something called set, something called save. What happens if I give those methods invalid data? They just go along happy as can be? No, they're going to stop if I did what? No, I wrote a validate method. The validate method is going to get triggered. You say, well, you can't set this as a priority. There is no 1A. There's ones, there's twos, there's threes, whatever it happens to be. All right, so we come in once again. We're going to change that function one more time. Instead of just changing the CSS, we're going to start playing around with our model. We're going to say, hey, model, I want you to set this attribute, the priority attribute with the priority I just pulled off of the button that was clicked. What did you want me to do? Low, medium, high. I'm going to update my model. So now my model has that data. And I'm going to say, okay, model, save yourself. Save yourself. Done. The pizza's gone. Almost done. Just one little piece to this. We've changed the view. We've updated the model. But now our user does something really inconvenient and they refresh the page. So we haven't quite done enough. We got to go update the view because the view needs to know about the fact that, hey, the model has this other attribute and you need to care about that. So what do we have to change now? Where are we going to go spend some time? Where have we spent a lot of time already? The view. We come back to that view. We're going to have to add a new function. I'm sorry, we're going to have to modify the render. All right, because at this point, render doesn't know about the fact that my model has a priority attribute that I have just adjusted. And again, of course, I'd expect that my server is going to give me this data too in some JSON format. So we come in, we say, okay, I would like to add a class based on the model's priority. Now again, I have a bit of a binding here in the fact that I'm expecting that the priority type matches the CSS I wrote. Right? I'm not saying this is the way you would want to do this in production. It's a pedantic example. Right? But you get the idea of where these things live and what each layer is responsible for. That sounds an awful lot like what we've been doing now on the server for a very long time. Layering is a good thing. I don't think anyone's going to argue about that. Although I did actually once get in an argument with a developer. I said, oh, you know what I don't like about Java? Code's all over the place. I just want to go into one file and edit it there. That'd be a really big file. Yeah, but at least I know where it is. Okay, I guess that's one concern. So, all right, that's part of it. Now, there's a few other things we didn't really touch on. One of those is router. For most of us, this is essentially the controller piece of the equation. Right? Router is where we get into things like linkability, bookmarkability, things like that. And by the way, you'll notice most of these applications do really nice, friendly URLs, as opposed to the gobbledygook you will see out of certain other things that shall go unnamed in this room. I turn the recording on. Backbone router is here to help you. All right, so what Backbone router allows you to do, and again, they all have the same concept, all the MVC libraries, it allows you to basically say this hash of URL equals this state. So go ahead and when you see this URL fragment, I want you to go call this endpoint. with this set of data. Now, there's a history API there as well, so that can handle the various things about going backwards and forwards. It will go ahead and step in on the off chance that your browser doesn't implement every piece of the HTML5 spec in terms of the history API. Excuse me. And again, this is really shocking. Its job is to say, oh, okay, you gave me this route. I'm going to go get that data from the server now. I know how to translate, account /123 to mean go get the account whose ID is 123. Rinse, repeat. Not too shocking there. So it has a relatively small API in terms of routes and navigate. That works with backbone.history, which again shouldn't be too shocking in what it's responsible for. There's a lot of least surprise concepts baked in here. And this is something I really appreciate. I saw a tweet this morning, and I couldn't quite tell if it was a quote from Ward Cunningham or not. But he basically said, you should understand the gist of something, just basically as soon as you see it. And if you gotta work hard to figure that out, you failed. Write it again, right? I've always believed in that method, like a method. If you can't fit a method on a page, especially in Java, you've done something wrong. I would argue anything in double digits where the lines, boy, we're probably stretching it. Now you're gonna have a few that maybe exceed that, but by and large, it should be pretty damn tiny. So save location, guess what that does? Saves your location. Shocking. Backbone.sync. So the examples I showed you, we were saving it locally, and that's probably not super useful for most of us. We're going to want to talk to the server. Sync will take care of that for us. So the model gets updated. We got to get that up to the server. No problem. Backbone can step in there and say, okay, I'm going to go tell your server what happened. And it's going to do that with what? A RESTful call. And it is expecting a JSON request response. You don't have to do it that way, but that's what makes life easier. And by the way, I think that's the way things should be done on the client these days. All right, so what does it get? It gets the method. So what am I calling? Get, put, post, delete. It gets the model. Here's the model I want you to update, and then whatever callback options you would like to bake into that as well, if you wish. So if that call succeeds, the server is happy. Awesome. Life is good. Now, this particular one is based on jQuery, so it gives you that same sort of interface if you're familiar with the jQuery ajax wrapper. It does not depend on jQuery. Right, but they chose to use that API in terms of how they wrote it. So method, that's going to be the CRUD concept here. So not too surprisingly, that's going to map to the verb you want to call on your server. I don't think that's controversial these days. And it has those Rails-based expectations in terms of endpoints. And you can configure it other ways if you wish, but go along is simpler. Model, not too surprising, that's going to be the thing that you just updated. So server, please take note of the fact that I changed the address on this particular account. Options, whatever interesting AJAX callbacks you want. Now, the expectation is that your server is going to respond with, hey, here's some new JSON. I've updated the model, here's the model back in JSON format. Maybe it's got a new ID, maybe it's got counters updated, whatever, but here it is. And of course, it is going to do that synchronously. I'm not sure if you can override that. I'm not sure if you can make that a synchronous call. I have not looked at that. I suspect you probably can if you want to. Although you may ask yourself, why would I want to do that if I'm trying to build this kind of application? So you can call any of the AJAX callbacks. So if you care about when there's something in error, there's a handful in the jQuery API in terms of success, failure, and I think there's different variants on the failure too if memory serves. Now, you don't have to use that. You can use local storage if you want. There's an API for that. There's a layer over that, I should say. You can also use WebSockets. By the way, that's the way we'd really like to do it. In a perfect world, we would just have a WebSocket connection back and forth. Because as fast as AJAX can be, you still pay a price. Because every time you got to do that connection, there's a cost to it. And I know it's not a huge cost, but if we're really trying to make performant applications, especially if we're trying to do anything in real time, WebSockets is the answer there. There is a local storage adapter. That shouldn't be too surprising. Server side, again, I've beaten this horse to death. It has expectations of RESTful endpoints. So it is expecting that you have a way of posting a collection, getting a specific element out of the collection, updating a specific element in the collection, deleting a specific element in the collection. Rinse, repeat. Replace that with something from your world and a meaningful ID. Now, Backbone knows how to serialize. It's got that nifty to JSON. And again, we are expecting the endpoints to return JSON. Now, most skeptical developers will ask, well, that's all neat, but who's using this? If nobody's using it, I don't know if I want to go there. Well, a lot of people. believe it or not, are playing with this. And I keep hearing various companies in our neck of the woods are playing with this stuff. Right? In fact, one's not too far from here. Right? But if you go out in the big bad world, there's a pretty decent chance you are running into applications already that are using it. Right? LinkedIn's mobile is based on this. Foursquare, Khan Academy does a bunch of stuff with these concepts. Groupon is leveraging this. Basecamp Mobile, Pandora, Code School, SeatGeek, Kicksend, Trello. A lot of folks have played with Trello, at least for fun. That's one of Fog Creek's offerings. Right? And that list grows every day. Now, one of the things that I think is incumbent upon us, one of our responsibilities, be aware of the fact that some of our competitors are probably playing with this too. And here's one of the things that I've learned as I've gotten older. Your competitors are never going to tell you why they're beating you. They have no incentive to do that. Right? Now, I'm not saying this is the answer to every problem you've had in IT. All right? I'm not saying you should all rush out tomorrow and build a backbone application. I mean, that'd be cool. I got no problem with that. But understand, this is something you need to be aware of. This is one of those things that's starting to come in our world. Now, you got to go into this with your eyes open. There are landmines here. This is not perfect for every situation, every application, everything you're going to run into. But there's a lot of really useful spots for this in modern applications. I said it before, I'll say it again. You guys are going to write some JavaScript. I'm sorry. Okay? Accept it. It's just the way it is. Now, again, you're going to need to rethink how your application works. You need to think about what these endpoints look like. You're going to need to build things in terms of services. Services that don't care how the data is displayed. I've got one friend right now, he's making the statement that the era of servers being anything more than, or that at this point, servers are just going to be JSON pumps. That's their job. You ask for some, I need this, here you go, here is a JSON, rinse, repeat. Now, having seen this pendulum already swing a few times in my short career, I'm hard-pressed to say that this is the last paradigm ever. I guarantee we're going to push it back the other way just because. We got to do something new. Somebody will discover lambdas.